In a galaxy ruled by action and strength, those who do not fight are discarded, and I was one of them. I wasn't born weak, but I never craved conflict. I didn't fight for status, didn't chase after victories. I was an anomaly, a disgrace. In my world, there's no room for passiveness. If you aren't powerful, you are nothing. And I became exactly that, nothing. The race I belong to worships strength. It's the highest virtue, the only way to earn respect. Our society was built on aggression and battle. Warriors are celebrated, honored, and remembered. From the moment we take our first breath, the expectations begin. Every child must show signs of ferocity, whether in play, speech, or action. Weakness is unacceptable. Hesitation means death. And those like me, the quiet ones, have no place among them. I didn't fight. I didn't roar with anger or challenge others. This made me invisible to my people, an outcast long before I was officially branded as one. They called me inactive. I didn't belong to the fighters who marched into battle or to the leaders who strategized victories. I was different, and that difference was a crime. They had a ritual for exiling the inactive, a final punishment for failing to fit into their world. In my case, it felt like a predetermined fate, something that had been coming for years. I had sensed it in every glance filled with contempt, every whispered conversation just loud enough for me to hear. I was a disappointment, especially to my family. My parents had hoped for a warrior, someone who could bring honor to the family name. What they got instead was a daughter who sat in silence, lost in thoughts they never tried to understand. Their love drained away, replaced by cold indifference. They stopped speaking to me long before the exile began, and when they finally did, their words carried more disappointment than anger. "We've done all we can. Now you must go." I didn't resist when they made the announcement. There was no trial, no defense. Everyone knew the outcome the moment they saw me. They gathered to witness my banishment, a spectacle disguised as tradition. My parents stood at the edge of the crowd, silent and still. It was as if I had never existed. Being labeled inactive wasn't just a title, it was a mark of shame. They believed my stillness came from cowardice. They thought my refusal to fight made me useless, a weight dragging them down. But they never understood. I wasn't afraid of combat. I simply never saw the point in it. Battles ended in destruction, even for the victors. What was the value in proving strength if it only left scars? There were moments, rare but noticeable, when strange things would happen around me. If I focused hard enough, everything seemed to slow down. Time itself would stretch, making me aware of every heartbeat, every flicker of movement. I thought it was just my imagination, something that happened when I zone out. I never mentioned it to anyone. They already saw me as broken. Admitting that I experienced time differently would have only added to their disgust. The day of my exile was supposed to be a solemn event, but it felt more like a celebration. They were happy to see me go, relieved to remove the blemish from their perfect society. They sent me to the outskirts of our galaxy, a barren wasteland where no life thrived. There was no ceremony, no farewell. Just a silent procession, ending with me alone in a cold, desolate world. I watched the ship disappear into the distance, leaving nothing behind but emptiness. I knew they would never return. As far as they were concerned, I was already gone. And as I stood there, surrounded by silence, the weight of their abandonment hit me like a blow to the chest. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel everything: anger, sadness, betrayal. They had cast me away without hesitation, without understanding who I was or what I could become. It hurt more than I could admit, but there was no one left to care. Alone in exile, survival became my only focus. The environment was unforgiving, filled with predators and hazards that pushed me to the brink. In one of these moments, with a beast's fangs inches from my throat, something strange happened. Time slowed. Every movement stretched out before me, giving me just enough clarity to escape. It wasn't luck. I had done something, though I didn't fully understand what. In the days that followed, I found myself slipping into that same state again, usually when I was in danger or overwhelmed. Time didn't just slow, it responded to me. At first, I thought it was instinct, but the more it happened, the more I realized this wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern. I could control it. My inactivity, the thing they had hated most about me, was not weakness. It was focus, a kind so deep it altered the flow of time itself. I began experimenting, cautiously at first. I slowed time during a storm to avoid falling debris. When a predator charged at me, I reversed time by a fraction of a second, just enough to sidestep the attack before it happened. It felt surreal, like discovering a hidden part of myself that had been waiting all along. This wasn't just a gift, it was power. The kind of power that could shift outcomes and rewrite events. I could see what others couldn't, move when others were frozen. But mastering it wasn't easy. Each time I manipulated time, it drained me, mentally and physically. It demanded absolute calm, the kind of stillness that required shutting out all emotions. Rage, fear, frustration. If I gave in to them, the ability slipped through my fingers. Training became a constant struggle against my own mind. I had to learn to freeze moments without hesitation, to fast forward just enough to predict movements, and to rewind without falling into confusion. I practiced relentlessly, but the more I honed my skill, the more isolated I became. Controlling time required solitude, quiet that no one else could provide. It was ironic. My people had banished me for being inactive, yet here I was, turning that stillness into something extraordinary. But what good was power if there was no one to share it with? My abilities made me capable of things they couldn't even dream of, but they had already cast me away. And no matter how much I improved, that truth remained. The bitterness grew, creeping in with every passing day. I was angry, angrier than I had ever been. I wasn't weak. I had never been weak. Yet they refused to see that. They had condemned me without understanding who I was or what I could do. For a time, I entertained the thought of using my power selfishly, of staying hidden while they destroyed themselves. Why should I care what happened to them? They had chosen to live by the sword. Let them suffer the consequences. But the universe had other plans. I began sensing the cracks forming across the galaxy, faint whispers of conflict brewing between my people and an enemy far more dangerous than they had ever faced. I watched from the sidelines as these tensions escalated, each battle driving them closer to a war they couldn't win. Their strength, the thing they had always relied on, wouldn't be enough this time. The enemy's technology was too precise, their tactics too advanced. The thought gnawed at me. I could help. I had the ability to alter time, to shift the outcome in their favor. But the anger held me back. They had thrown me away like I was nothing. Would they even accept my help if I returned? Or would they treat me with the same contempt, no matter what I did? The choice wasn't easy. I could stay in exile, safe in the knowledge that their downfall wasn't my concern. Or I could step back into their world, knowing they might never welcome me. In the end, it wasn't about them. It was about me. I had spent too long questioning my worth, letting their judgment define who I was. My gift wasn't just a way to survive, it was a way to prove, to myself, that I was more than what they believed. If there was even a chance to make a difference, to stop the war and save lives, I had to take it. Not for them, but for me. The enemy's attack came without warning, shattering the illusion of invincibility my people had clung to for generations. They always believed their strength would be enough, but they were wrong. The first strike was swift, precise, and devastating. Their technology outmatched anything we had seen, reducing mighty warriors to mere targets. Battles erupted across planets, skies filled with fire and chaos, and entire fleets fell apart in minutes. Brute force, the one thing my people had built their identity around, was now useless. Their weapons moved too slowly, their strategies too predictable. The enemy's precision left no room for mistakes. From my distant vantage point, I saw everything unfold in fragments. Warriors charging, weapons blazing, only to be cut down before they could reach their targets. Explosions suspended in time, ships frozen mid-collapse, soldiers caught in moments of panic. I slipped between seconds, watching the carnage as though it were a series of still images. It was overwhelming, and yet I couldn't look away. Every second stretched into an eternity, every movement exposing the flaws in a society that had cast me out for my stillness. I could see exactly how the battle was unraveling, how the enemy exploited every weakness my people refused to acknowledge. The arrogance of strength had made them blind, and now it was costing them everything. As I stood there, time suspended around me, I felt the weight of a decision I wasn't ready to make. I had sworn to stay out of their world, to let them deal with the consequences of their choices. But watching them fall wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. There was no triumph in their defeat, only sorrow. Their rejection still echoed in my mind, every insult, every dismissal, every reminder that I didn't belong. But I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. These were still my people, no matter how they had treated me. I had the power to stop this, to change the outcome, but would they even accept it? Would they thank me for saving them, or cast me out again once the battle was over? The dilemma twisted inside me, leaving me paralyzed. It would be so easy to walk away, to let them fall. Yet, despite everything, I couldn't. My time in isolation had taught me more than how to survive. It had shown me the value of peace. I understood now that my gift wasn't just about control. It was about knowing when to act. And this was that moment. I slipped into the chaos unnoticed, a ghost in the storm. Time folded around me, bending and stretching to my will. In one instant, I froze a squadron of enemy ships mid-attack, giving a group of warriors just enough time to escape. In another, I rewound a fatal moment by a few seconds, redirecting a stray missile away from its intended target. My actions were subtle, calculated. I wasn't a soldier in the traditional sense, but I knew how to shift the balance. Every second mattered, and I made sure not a single one was wasted. The warriors I saved never saw me. They only knew that something had changed. A missile that should have hit didn't. An ambush that should have ended in slaughter somehow failed. Confusion spread through the battlefield, both among the enemy and my own people. They didn't understand what was happening, only that the tide had started to shift in their favor. It was a small shift, but it was enough to give them hope. Battles that had seemed lost were now uncertain, and uncertainty was enough to keep them fighting. Still, I knew this was only the beginning. My people might survive today, but the war was far from over. And the longer I stayed hidden, the heavier the burden became. They didn't know it was me, but I knew. I felt the weight of every life I saved, every choice I made. As the warriors began to regroup, whispers of suspicion spread. They knew something, or someone, was intervening. They couldn't explain how entire enemy formations collapsed without warning, or how they survived attacks they shouldn't have. But they were starting to believe there was an unseen force on their side. The realization filled me with a strange mix of relief and fear. I had spent so long being invisible, but now, even without revealing myself, I could feel the weight of their gaze. The final assault came with terrifying force, a coordinated strike meant to end the war in a single blow. The enemy unleashed their full might, overwhelming the last defenses of my people. Warriors fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. Their weapons faltered, their formations broke. The enemy's precision left no room for recovery. For all their strength, my people were being dismantled, piece by piece. If something didn't change, it would be over. I could no longer stand on the sidelines. In that critical moment, I stepped forward, out of the shadows and into the heart of the battle. Time rippled as I moved. With a single thought, I froze the entire enemy fleet mid-attack. Warships hovered motionless, energy beams stalled in midair, and missiles hung suspended like debris caught in a web. The battlefield fell silent, the chaos paused as if the universe itself held its breath. For the first time, everyone, friend and foe, turned their gaze toward me. The warriors stared, stunned to see me again after all this time. They knew who I was, but not what I had become. Confusion mixed with disbelief as they tried to comprehend how someone they had exiled could wield such power. Some looked at me with gratitude, realizing that without me, they would already be lost. Others, however, were less welcoming. Their skepticism was etched in every glance, every whispered word exchanged between them. Old wounds didn't heal easily, and not everyone was ready to forgive or forget. I approached the leaders, the very ones who had cast me away. Their expressions flickered between awe and distrust. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, finally, they asked how I had done it, how someone they had branded as useless could control time itself. I told them the truth. Strength isn't just about muscle or fury. It's about clarity, precision, and knowing when to act. My power came not from rage or force but from the stillness they had despised in me. The strength they overlooked had been within me all along. Some of the leaders accepted my words, nodding slowly as if seeing the world differently for the first time. Others remained cold, their pride preventing them from acknowledging that they had been wrong. But it didn't matter. I hadn't come for their approval. I had come because I knew what needed to be done, with or without them. Using my gift, I helped them coordinate a new strategy. We couldn't match the enemy's firepower, but with precise timing and flawless execution, we didn't need to. Every move I made created opportunities, seconds stretched into lifetimes, giving the warriors time to outmaneuver their opponents. I rewound fatal mistakes before they could unfold, fast-forwarded moments to reveal hidden patterns in the enemy's attack. It was no longer a battle of strength but of timing, and with me at the center, we turned the tide. The enemy, once so confident in their superiority, faltered. Their attacks became disjointed, their ships caught in traps they couldn't see coming. One by one, their forces fell apart, and soon, the remaining fleet was forced to retreat. The battle was won, not by brute force but by precision, and by a girl they had cast aside. When the dust settled, the leaders approached me again, their expressions softer, more uncertain. They offered me a place among them, an acknowledgement of my worth, though the words came slowly, as if unfamiliar to them. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to reject them, to walk away as they had once done to me. But I knew better. My place wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about knowing where I belong, where I could make a difference. So I accepted, not for validation but for myself. I had spent so long trying to understand what my gift meant, only to realize that being inactive had never been a flaw. It had been my greatest strength. In a world obsessed with power and action, it was the quiet moments that had saved us all.